Thank you. And we are recording this so it can be posted and rebroadcast and seen by others in their free time. Whatever you say may be captured for posterity, and recognize that in terms of your personal information, your personal health information. And if you want us to stop the recording at some point, that's also an option that you have. But I have to ask you to squeak up about that.
Okay.
Right? Okay, Francis, the floor is yours. Floor is yours.
Okay. So we kind of determined who's here. So I don't think there's anybody. So there's one person here that hasn't applied yet and one has. So we did introductions. Questions haven't applied at all. Okay, so I'm going to ask if anybody who hasn't yet applied, if they have any specific questions about that, about a first application. Anybody?
So
okay. So I'm going to ask some questions.
That would be over to Caitlin, as I recall.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Just
do you have any questions, Caitlin, or are you okay just to meet up? We're kind of chatting directly to each other to pick a date. So
yeah, I don't know. I probably have a lot of questions, so I'll just save that for a different.
We'll leave it for now. If you have anything to ask after you gather some information.
I'm just going to make one very basic point, Caitlin. I'm assuming you're here because you happen to have a diagnosis of PKU.
Yes.
Okay, so you are probably almost certainly eligible for this thing called the disability tax credit because you're on a therapy to prevent becoming really messed up. Right? All right.
Okay.
And the legal issue is that, and it's I don't know if you can see it here on the screen. It says the credit for mental or physical impairment, but actually, if you look at it more carefully in the little A sentence, an individual has one or more severe and prolonged impairments in physical or mental functions. Caitlin, you will probably qualify because you have an impairment in the function of one enzyme in your liver.
Yeah.
It's the PKU enzyme, otherwise known scientifically as the phenylalanine hydroxylase enzyme. And it's not working properly. And that's leading to some issues with managing the amount of phenylalanine. And so you're on a therapy to control the and limit the amount of phenylalanine hitting your brain. That's and that's why. And it's prolonged. The word in law, the word prolonged means going to be around for more than a year. So it's that broken enzyme is going to be around for probably your lifetime. All right. And severe, yeah, if you weren't on therapy to control the higher levels of phenylalanine, you would be your severe enzyme physical impairment would lead to significant mental impairments. And that's what the therapy is all about, to prevent that. So that's my editorial comment. How's that? All right. And by the way, my name is John Adams. It's on the screen. I don't have PKU. I'm a carrier, and I have a son with PKU, who's a grown adult and a university graduate. And if you're visiting Toronto sometime and you have a really serious problem, he'll drive his big fancy red truck with lights and sirens and come and save your life. He drives a fire truck for the city of Toronto. Right, so that's right. And we don't, when he's whipping down, and he loves to drive fast in the big truck, and we don't want him to have any brain fog while he's doing that. So All right. So, Francis, back to you.
Okay, so does anybody else have any questions yet?
Does it matter if you have atypical PKU? Would that make a difference?
You mean
No.
classical opposed to mild or whatever?
Yeah.
What matters is the amount of time you're spending on all of the many tasks of PKU therapy. All right? And that's why we suggest and recommend, and we'll work with you, Francis will work with you to develop a spreadsheet to document all those tasks of PKU therapy and the time you're taking daily, weekly, monthly, yearly on those various tasks. And we have to work with you to legitimately get it up to the magic threshold of an average of 14 hours a week. That's written, I can take it down this, I can scroll down this section. That 14 hours is actually written right into the law. But you would be surprised. It's
She helped me prove I spend like 18 or 19 hours.
right.
Yeah.
And adults with PKU are a little closer to the line of the 14 hours, but for a parent with a child, a dependent child with PKU, it's a slam dunk because you get to count the PKU person's time and the caregiver's time. So typically for a mom looking after a PKU child, double counting times to manage, preparing the ordering the formula and preparing the formula and consuming the formula and supervising the child consuming the formula, the young child, etc. You get to double count the time of caregiver and child, and we quite often get to 30 or more hours. Francis deserves the record for helping an adult in Saskatchewan who has some some special challenges with the diet. And if I'm going on memory here, Francis, correct me, you got her up to 50 hours a week. The two sisters, if you recall, in Saskatchewan?
Very close to that, yes, like 45 or something. Yes.
45 hours, yeah.
That was in Calgary. They're from Calgary.
Oh, Calgary. My bad.
I just want to interrupt. Now, I'm assuming, and I think you just said this, John, that this does include food prep, formula prep.
It includes it doesn't include prep or consuming regular foods.
No, but weighing
it
out
does
their meals.
Anything that is therapeutic, whether it's the drug Kuvan or the formula, the medical formula, which is prescribed, and or the special medical foods, the low protein foods, ordering them, waiting for them to be delivered at home, managing the inventory, and preparing them, measuring them, consuming them, keeping a log, ordering your lancets and your filter paper cards, doing your blood tests on a regular basis, submitting them, and waiting and getting a response from the clinic or the lab, and then going to your PKU medical appointments, including the time it takes you to get there, the time you wait while you're there, and the time when you're actually interacting with any or all of the members of your healthcare team.
Okay.
That's it that's a summary of the tasks of PKU therapy that we suggest you document in a spreadsheet. And we'll have, if you're comfortable with spreadsheets, that's great. If you're not, we'll help you.
And I've got a list of questions. Some of them are from others. Some of them are just things that I get, and I'm like, I don't really know how to answer that. So I'm just gonna go ahead. Well, one question that I get sometimes is basically someone who is there a point of applying for the disability tax credit if they don't have a job, or if they're not a taxpayer, or even if they're collecting disability as well as not having a job? I get that people want to know, if I'm not paying taxes, I'm not going to get a tax credit. Is that true? Can
The short answer is yes, that's true, but there's more to consider. All right.
Okay.
The way Parliament has written the law, this is what's called a non-refundable tax credit. What that means is you get the tax credit if you're paying some federal income taxes. And it also means you don't get it if you're not paying some federal income taxes. All right, so that's just looking at the DTC by itself. But the DTC is very important in another way. It provides a different kind of benefit because it is the automatic eligibility for some other credits and benefits. One of those credits is a DTC person can be a benefit to another person in their life, whether they live with them or not. A caregiver is any person who's providing all or some of food, shelter, or clothing. And that person then can claim something called the Canada Caregiver Credit for the DTC person. And you do not have to be living with the person, right? But the really big benefit is automatic eligibility to set up something called the Registered Disability Savings Plan, or sometimes called the RDSP. And it's relatively new. It's been around for, it's coming up to 15 years. And with proof of your DTC, you can go to a consultant or a financial, you have to set it up through a financial institution. And I'm going to turn to another person on the call tonight, Lisa, and ask her who has a daughter late diagnosed and affected by PKU, but who also works in financial services. And Lisa has lived experience in helping people with the Registered Disability Savings Plan. Lisa.
I have. What do you want me to go through the whole thing, or
Why don't you just do if I can pick on you to make it a little bit personal, what difference does the RDSP make for your PKU young adult daughter?
well, in a nutshell, if you can save $1,500 a year, which breaks down to $125 a month, the government will give you up to $3,500 a year till the age of 49. Now, if you're low income, if you're on government assistance, here in Alberta, it's AISH. If you're on low income, they will also give you an extra $1,000 once a year, up to a maximum of $20,000, again to the age of 49. So, for example, Cindy invests $125 a month, but she is getting, $475 a month on top of her own personal investment. So for the first $1,000 a year, that you can invest, the government will give 300%. So there's $3,000 right there. And then
And-
the next $500 that you give to round out that $1,500 a year, the government will give an extra 200%. And I don't care who or what you want to invest in, but you're not going to get those kind of investment returns from anyone. Now, they're saying all that, if you're low income and you cannot afford anything, you can't afford the minimum of $25 a month, you can still be eligible for that $1,000 a year bond. So you could still get up to $20,000 from the government. And it's because, now on the very personal side of this, it is because of the government that Cindy was not diagnosed till she was 10 months old and all the brain damage has happened. To me personally, if you can get money from the government, you get it, you take it, because they take our money. We need it more than they do, particularly when we have, well, PKU, for example. You can't just go out and buy ordinary food. Food is expensive, and we need that extra help to live on. And I don't know what it's like across the country other than Alberta, but here with AISH is cut off at the age of 65. So this is where the RDSP kicks in at the age of 60 and can really help with that hugely. There is a whole lot of little incidentals in that we can get into it another time, but it would take a little bit of time. But basically, if you qualify for the disability tax credit, you're a Canadian resident, you are under the age of 60, you qualify for the RDSP.
Right.
And it's something I strongly recommend you look into once you do get qualified for the DTC.
So,
I
Bob,
kind of have a question about that.
So
This
do
is-
I.
This is speaking about the RDSP, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the confusion. It says that you can, you have to apply for it before you turn 49.
Yes, you do.
But what if after you have turned 49, can you apply for the for the RDSP?
You can, if you are likely to, well, I'm going to talk about Alberta because I know Alberta rules and whatnot. I'm sorry, I'm useless across the country otherwise. But with AISH, you have to have no income, virtually no income. You cannot have any savings. You can have up to $100,000 in savings in an RSP, a TFSA, in any kind of investment you like. But the minute you go over $100,000, you do not qualify for AISH, except if you have an RDSP. You can contribute yourself up to $200,000. So if you're 50 years old and your TFSA is maxed out at $100,000 and you are on government help you being on AISH, that is when I would recommend, okay, once you get the inheritance, we can put it into the RDSP and you don't lose your government assistance. You do not qualify for any of the grants and bonds at that point. Once the year you turn 49, as of December 31st, you do not qualify for the grants and bonds.
So you're
But
basically saying, sorry, you're basically saying that you can put your own money into it.
you can, but yeah, it's a shelter for that extra inheritance money. If you don't have any significant money to put into it, that is when I turn around and say, put it into a TFSA.
Right, okay,
Okay.
that makes sense.
But also one very exciting part of it is 99% of people with PKU and any other metabolic disorder are diagnosed, hopefully at birth, not left like Cindy, but it is retroactive for 10 years. And I'm sure, Francis, you would get into that.
Yeah, I applied for mine. I just got there before my 49th birthday.
No, but for the DTC,
For the
sorry.
DTC.
Yeah. So with the RDSP being retroactive for 10 years, when people just qualify for the DTC and they get that reimbursement check, there is a breakdown of over the years how to get over a 5-year period. You can get up to $50,000 from the government because it is retroactive as well. The RDSP is retroactive up to 10 years.
Okay.
Right.
Probably just totally blew that all out of the water. Sorry.
Okay, so we got pretty deep into the weeds there of different scenarios, different ages. So let's take it back to, from the other members of our audience, or are there any burning questions about the RDSP right at the moment?
Can I ask one? It might be really stupid.
Go ahead.
Nothing is stupid.
Yeah, of course.
So like hypothetically, like you get approved, you have the RDSP account or whatever, they give you that $1,000 or whatever a year that she mentioned. Does that money have to be spent solely on like stuff for, like, I guess your disability, or is it yours to spend how you see fit?
Okay, now this is going to be a little longish, I think, but the reason you can only receive the grants and bonds till the age of 49, and then you have to start withdrawing the money at the age of 60. So there is that 10-year period there that all the grants and bonds have to stay there for a minimum of 10 years. If you turn around, say you have over the years contributed $15,000 and you say, well, you know what, I need to pull $1,000 out of my account, and I've had the account for 9 years, for example. If you pull $1,000 out, the government is then going to turn around and pull out $3,000. For every dollar you take out, they take back 3 of their dollars. Now, the reasoning for this is to be an incentive to leave the money in there till the age of 60. Because, well, age cuts out at 65, and at the age of 60, with across the board is people with disabilities, if they reach the age of 60, generally their parents are much older if they're still here. Well, their parents are much older, obviously, if they're still alive. Their siblings have their own lives, and they become a real financial burden on the government. So that is why the Registered Disability Savings Plan came about. So families can start saving for the individual in their senior years.
Okay, I gotcha.
The money is available to you, but at the same time, they're saying they want you to keep it in there as long as possible.
Okay, 'cause I know somebody who has an RDSP, not for PKU, and the way they explained that was very different. So like I'm seeing your
Okay.
point now. Like it's to like leave it in there and like let it fester and invest,
Yeah.
but that's not
And
how
the
it's explained to me.
Other part, Margaret, the other part of your question is you can spend it on whatever you like. There are zero restrictions, whether it's medical, whether you want to go on a holiday, or you just want a bit of extra money in your pocket. It's
The
they
goal
don't-
is to like let it sit and build, basically.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Two points, if I might toss it. I actually know the guy who came up with and implemented the registered disability savings plan.
Joel Flaherty.
He was the Minister of Finance for Canada at the time, and he actually he's passed on, but he and his wife had 3 children, 3 boys, and they were all unaffected, normal. And then one boy was stung by a bee and had an extremely bad reaction to the bee sting and is significantly physically and intellectually disabled. And Jim Flaherty's thinking when he designed this was that a person with an impairment, whether it's a physical function or a mental function, is unlikely to earn as much over their lifetime as if they didn't have that impairment. All right. And it would make sense for the government to encourage the families and the individuals affected to save for when they're 60 and older. All right. So I'm just reinforcing the point. But it actually involved the lived experience of a parent having a normal teenage boy who was suddenly not normal at all. And that's done. And the other thing, it's a point to clarify, and Lisa, question, when it does make sense for you to start taking the money out when you're older, taxable or non-taxable?
Okay, the contribution portion you put in, non-taxable. The grants, the bonds, and the growth, they are taxed. Now, the formula they have set up for the withdrawals, it isn't a huge amount. So needless to say, really the taxes are not going to be a large amount, but yes, they're still definitely there. The contribution portion, not, because it's already taxed money.
Right. So I want to put the issue to a vote. Who's against getting free money from the federal government?
Oh, that's just too funny.
Yeah, I can manage that.
Okay, I just all right. Okay. Thank you. That was great, Lisa. Thank you very much. And great question, Margaret. Any other questions about the RDSP?
Can I have question?
Please.
Yeah.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, so like it's very new, everything is new. We have been like since now she is turning 17. I never heard like before. I don't know where team is like our genetic team they know or we can get information from them, but like how Reba, should I apply? I have to apply for her or she can apply like it's because she is 17 already.
Since she's 17, you would have to apply for her.
Okay, so for her, like
when
as
she turns 18, she would have to apply.
again.
Probably.
Or it's
Probably.
transferable, no? Or maybe
Um,
she can apply after 18, or what you?
Well, but says, yeah, remember the point that this, once she's approved, no matter who
Mhm.
applies for her, once she's approved, the tax credit is retroactive for a maximum of 10 years. So if you wait, you're actually losing a year of retroactivity.
So
All
for
right, so
10,
that
sorry, sorry, lots of questions. Is if like if we apply now and like okay we get and everything is going good. So for next 10 years we just put the money and government put the money, as my understanding, right? For next 10 years.
well, just we have some experience with now.
Oh.
Number one, your clinic are experts in biochemical medicine and genetics. Your clinic are not experts in the Income Tax Act
Yeah.
and financial, and they're not experts in financial planning. So you have to educate yourself,
Yeah.
and you can get some help with that. And
Mhm.
and yeah, we're here doing this because we have discovered these things, and these are potential benefits to people, and we want people to know about them and to be able to act on them. All right. So that's why we do things like this webinar. My suggestion is, from a financial point of view, it makes sense to apply sooner rather than later, even if your daughter has to apply again when she becomes an adult legally. All right. All right. And the going backwards 10 years, which would be the case for your daughter, it's the tax credit goes to the supporting parent, and it probably makes sense that the parent who earns more income, more taxable income, should claim it. You have a choice, and you don't have to wait 10 years for 10 years of retroactivity. You write to the CRA and you ask them to reassess you for the past 10 years. It takes them and you start getting money showing up in your bank account, Curtis, as tax, because you've overpaid your taxes for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it would take maybe as much as a year to get 10 years worth of tax refunds.
Yeah.
All right. And yeah, and not everybody knows about this. That's why
Yeah, I was confused because my son, he was diagnosed like type 1 diabetes when he was 6. So right away we get information about the kind of tax credits from federally, so it's we don't have to open an account or anything. We just get money monthly. So I was just confused about that because this all information came from the clinic, the diabetic team. So but we did not hear anything about a rebuzzed team, so that's why it's new. So
if you want to be a little bit of I'm going to use crude language, a little bit of a shit disturber, you could educate the genetics clinic that they could be doing a little bit more for the families by informing them of the possibility of the disability tax credit for these genetic conditions and metabolic conditions. All right. And saying, gosh, the diabetes clinic initiated providing us with this information. And it'd be great if more clinics for more diseases would do similar things. All right. But that's only if you want to be a little bit of a shit disturber.
Yeah, so maybe for diabetes, it's the thing we have to buy insulin and all supplies, and we have to pay for that. And for MSUD, we get like everything free. Maybe we were thinking
No,
all
it
the
has
time
not,
like
it
that.
has not, this has not, the DTC has nothing to do with your out-of-pocket
Oh,
expenses. All right,
oh,
all right. It's independent of that. All right, so
oh,
that's an assumption, that it's a common assumption, and it's
yeah.
wrong. All right,
Oh.
simple. Okay. All right, all right.
Yeah,
So,
because we don't have to pay anything for MSUD, right? So it was just a misunderstanding, right?
well, that's interesting, because in the case of PKU, that's not necessarily true, even in Alberta, as well as other places, because the Alberta doesn't pay for all of the low protein foods. There is a dollar limit in Alberta, and
A
I don't
limit,
know.
yeah, it
Yeah,
is,
so,
yeah.
and if you order more, you can order more than that dollar limit, but if you do, you'll get it, but you have to pay for it. So that's not,
Yeah,
it's, so if you order more low protein food than the Alberta dollar figure, then you are paying out of your own pocket for that, for your MSUD daughter.
yeah, actually we never had to pay before. That's why I know the
Okay.
limit,
Well,
and
count
she
your,
has, yeah,
count yourself fortunate. Now, in the case of other provinces, and we have
yeah,
Margaret from Nova Scotia, I know that Nova Scotia is not as generous as a
No, we have like
low protein
way
food.
best choices, but I don't have a cap. So like I could order like 5 times a year if I wanted, pretty much as much as I wanted, but our selections are slim pickings.
Right. There's some staples, not no prepared foods. Right. So
No,
yeah.
the only prepared food we get it now is
So,
tortillas.
but welcome to the distinctions among the provinces across the country of Canada. All right. So that's all right. And we are so we have to, it does depend on which province you're in part.
John,
We just
sorry, I just have a quick question about this whole DTC with the metabolics. Has this always been there? Was something that's just kind of been found out, or
No, this is relatively new.
okay?
All right, and we still have a lot of education to do of some of the clinics, because actually, if I'm going to scroll, we've had to go to the Tax Court of Canada to win the fight for PKU. Not once, but 18 times. 18 times I have acted as legal agent for PKU individuals unjustly denied the disability tax credit. And do you know what the problem was? I'm happy to say it's past tense. The problem in the law is that this law, which you see on the screen in front of you, all right, is, and I just bear with me while I scroll down to the right section. Okay, under time spent on therapy. All right, you will see that. Let me tell you what diet restrictions, activities related to dietary or exercise restrictions or regimes don't count. And we've called this, and our clinics call this, the PKU diet. They probably also call it the MSUD diet. But it doesn't matter what, and I had to argue in front of judges of the Tax Court of Canada for more than on one occasion that it doesn't matter what we call the PKU diet, it's actually a medically necessary therapy, and therefore the time you spend on the formulas and the special low protein foods and the blood tests and the specialized clinic visits, et cetera, should be counted. Now, I went to the tax court of Canada for people 18 times. And I'm sad to say that I only won 18 of 18 cases on that. It doesn't matter what we call it. This is a therapy and qualifies for all this, providing we can prove the 14 hours. Now, the good news is, let me just scroll up here. Can you see this little b and then little one, little Roman 1 and little Roman 2? You see there? There's an, as of June of this year, Parliament added this paragraph. The daily consumption of a medical food or medical formula, blah, 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 includes, shall be determined, all right? So this is a huge victory to get the MSUD and PKU and metabolic medical formulas and medical foods recognized as specifically in the law as counting towards life-sustaining therapy. It's not a diet restriction or diet regime. As your typical politician understands the word diet.
Okay, but you qualify for the DTC. Are you going to have to reapply every 5 years like certain people do? Once you're done, you're done?
Not necessarily. The CRA has discretion over that.
Okay.
And all right, typically what we're now that Parliament has slapped them on the wrist by putting this paragraph in and basically that paragraph has stop denying the DTC for people on the PKU or MSUD diet. That's what that paragraph, stop doing that, CRA, approve them. They typically, an approval for a child will be from birth to age 18. And then typically the person becomes an adult and the CRA requires them to apply again. In some cases, then as adults, we're seeing a variety of length of time for the approval. Some are getting it indefinitely. Some are not. Francis, who was initially one of those turned down, and we were getting ready to go to court. And as it turned out, the CRA came to their senses in her file before we had to go to court. But you got approved for how many years? And you're getting ready to reapply.
Yes. Some second application I have to do, which I want to send the information to my doctor by January. And I had a letter of objection. Sorry, I had to send a letter of objection because the first response I had was the letter of determination as a denial. Then I sent the letter of objection, and then John said, okay, wait 90 days before you send anything back. You don't hear from them. I heard from them and I was declined again. And then that's when I started to prepare the letter of appeal. I just about dropped it in the mail because my husband and we were going on vacation, and I went, well, I better send this in the mail right now. I stamped it and everything. And my husband came in with the mail and I looked at it and I was like, oh, I just got accepted. I don't have to send this now. So I wasted a stamp, but so what? I had it all ready to go. I had it was just
how many years was that initial approval for?
Well, it went back to, I want to say 2012, and now I'm applying. So well, maybe 2010, 2010, and then I'm applying for it again already in 2023. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I just think it's funny how, yeah, your genetics and everything, your makeup has changed. They expect it to change.
So,
Well,
but
but
I'm wondering, John, if this paragraph, if it just went in there in June, that's why the latest people have received it as an indefinite and they don't have to apply again.
I don't know. It was too soon. It's given that there are 50,000 different employees of the Canada Revenue Agency. I'm not sure that they all read the same memos. And there is a the CRA has a series of field offices across the different parts of Canada, and every one of their field offices has a small group of people dedicated to DTC applications, and they don't all do the same thing. All right, all right, kind of similar to the provincial governments. They don't all give.
Okay. Okay, I'll get
And
back to that.
and the other really important principle is anything you're sending to CRA or receiving from them, keep a copy.
Yes.
It's really, really important to keep your paperwork, right? CRA loses things among those 50,000 people across, literally. I've been preparing for a trial, and a CRA officer or a lawyer for the CRA will call me and saying, John, we can't find the spreadsheet, or they can't, the staff in the field office can't find the spreadsheet. We accept that you submitted it. Would you just send me a copy and we'll get this thing sorted out? All right. I mean, literally, you know, that they, by the way, the tell, just so you know, I've developed a reputation in the Canada Revenue Agency. I'm the guy who's helping people submit applications with spreadsheets. If they get an application with a spreadsheet, they think the John Adams fingerprints are on it somewhere. All right, all right. And this was, nobody was doing spreadsheets before we came along. All right, just to prove the 14 hours. All right, all right. So and the spreadsheet we prepared with the first case that went to trial. It was a PK mom with a 3-year-old in Hamilton, Ontario, and she was a very analytical person. So we said, okay, let's do a spreadsheet. And the interesting thing is, people, it's become your new normal, doing your thing with your PKU or your MSUD, and you actually have forgotten all the things you're doing because you're dealing with your PKU or your MSUD. Let me tell you a small story. The clinic in Montreal referred a mom, PKU mom, to us, and the mom called me up and says, John, you know, she has a 6-year-old PKU and other kids, and she said, John, there's no way I'm spending 14 hours a week on this. So I said, well, you're the mom. You're probably right, but indulge me, work with me. Here, well, let me send you the sample spreadsheet. Long story short, we went back and forth a bit. We stopped counting at 30 hours, right? And the mom turned to me and said, "Oh my God, no wonder my other kids complain that I have no time for them."
Yeah.
Right. So, all right. So, I mean, it's become your new normal, particularly for moms of younger kids, and for adults, maybe who got a little relaxed with their diet therapy and then decided to get more serious about it. As Margaret told us her wonderful story earlier about, oh my God, this is a lot of work. Yes.
You never get a day off.
Yeah, there's not even on a sick day.
Is
Okay.
it possible to get a copy of this magnificent spreadsheet?
Well, we have samples, right? We're happy to do. It's also on the record in the court, in the tax court of Canada. So, but yeah, happy to do that.
Perfect.
Lisa, do me a favor. Send me a note afterwards to remind my feeble brain.
Will do. Will do.
All right.
Okay, so I have another question. This was from somebody that couldn't be here tonight. And my question is, she wants to know, what, John, is your experience with adults with PKU getting disability insurance? I have had lots of turndowns from many companies due to the fact that I have PKU. I was able to get coverage through RBC, but all the other companies have had issues with. So I said, do you mean the RDSP? And she said, no, disability insurance. So I asked, why, what's it for? And she said, it's a package with my life insurance. It's if I'm ever unable to work. So she said that she was declined for several other companies, but she did end up getting it with RDS, the Royal Bank, I think.
RBC. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've heard of somebody saying they wanted to get disability insurance and had trouble getting it because of their PKU. I would be happy. I think I would like to have a follow-up with the individual if she's prepared to. I don't know if she wants us to take it further, because if she could still have the rejection letters from specific companies, and I won't mention any names, I'm quite prepared to be the shit disturber, and and on behalf and say I'm quite happy to write to the president of the company, say what WTF? Sorry.
Yeah.
What the frick? Okay. And I'm also prepared to write to the Association for the Life and Health and Insurance Industry of Canada, who I have regular dealings with, wearing another hat, and basically be the pebble in their sandal. I'm really good as a pebble in other people's sandals. All right.
Okay.
That's,
I'll put you in
just so
touch
you
with
know,
her somehow.
this change in the Income Tax Act for the medical foods, what really happened? Well, I had to do the first two cases at tax court. We had to do trials. One knocked it out of the park, but CRA was still being difficult and still turning people down. And we had to, and so the next 16 cases, actually, we didn't have to go to trial. We settled with a consent for the judge to come with a ruling against the government, against the CRA. The next 16 times, sometimes it was a month before the trial, sometimes it was the night before the trial. It varied, depended on how good the lawyer was they were dealing with. In any event, the judges of the tax court and the court administrators got so ticked at the Canada Revenue Agency for wasting the court's time with these things that they started, the Chief Justice of the tax court communicated with the Deputy Minister of Justice of Canada, saying there's a problem and the taxpayers are right and the CRA is wrong, and you need to change something to fix this problem. The lawyers for the Department of Justice acting for the CRA got equally ticked off at the CRA for doing dumb things, because they get performance rated on cases they win or lose, and they get a loser file in front of them and they want it off their plate as fast as they can. And finally, I got the second case with the same lawyer in Ottawa, And we knew we had established credibility with each other in the first case. And the second time, he just called me and says, John, send me the bloody spreadsheet. I'll talk to the CRA. Right. And then he called back the next day and said, okay, we're consenting for a judgment against the CRA. No problem. John, if you don't mind me asking, how many more of these have you got? And I said, well, we've got about 16 active files and potentially 2,000. And he sighed, and he said, John, I'm going to talk to my boss. The Justice Department went to the policymakers in the Finance Department who decide what's in the Income Tax Act, how it's in, and what's not in it. And so this amendment was one of 832 pages of amendments in June to something called the Budget Implementation Act of 2022. So that's really what the Pebble, and I had to do those individual cases because the CRA would not appeal to the Federal Court of Appeal. And I couldn't get a binding legal precedent from the Federal Court of Appeal. And the CRA thought they were going to wear me down. And instead, I wore them down by being the pebble in the sandal 18 times. And now we've got this fixed in the law. But that's the inside story. I wouldn't give up. And the court got mad at the CRA. And the Justice Department lawyers got mad at the CRA for wasting everybody's time. And justice lawyers got to finance, and finance in the budget changed the law. That's so that's long, and I didn't say anything when that came out in a footnote in the budget. I was just said, I watched it. I said, something will go wrong, something will go wrong. And then all of a sudden Parliament finished its business in June and changed the Income Tax Act. So that's my political science story behind the DTC for PKU and MSUD